Ladies, gentlemen, and those who know better, welcome back again, and thank you for joining me this evening. MyHouse.wad was a humble, unassuming project that turned out to be hiding something deeper, but I didn't anticipate just how big the mystery really was. I'm going to wrap things up in a nice, concise way here, but before I do, I should remind you that the file at the center of this work of unfiction is an incredibly ambitious, masterfully crafted experience that you can play for yourself from the comfort of your own home. In the description is a link to the Doomworld forums thread where it all started. From here, you can download MyHouse.wad. You'll need the latest version of the GZ Doom source port to run it, but installing that is a breeze and it's well worth it for such a unique experience. If playing Doom WADs isn't really your thing, then I have a full playthrough of the WAD available on my channel in 3 parts. I'll have a link in the description to that as well. Note that it is pretty long. It's a blind playthrough and I'm not the best editor, so it's not a terribly focused experience, but it is the closest you'll get to playing it without actually playing it. Which I will remind you, again, is a thing you can do. I'll be summarizing everything in this video for those who prefer to just hear how the story plays out. This is your last chance to follow a link in the description before I get into spoilers, okay? Ready? Great. Just one last time, let's enter my house. On March 2nd, a user on the Doomworld forums named Veg posted a new map. In his post, he explained he hadn't made a map for Doom since the early 2000s. However, when his friend Tom suddenly passed away, Veg found himself in possession of a floppy disk containing some of Tom's old unfinished Doom maps. One of these maps is a recreation of Tom's childhood home, and Veg set forth to relearn Doom mapping in order to clean up and release the map as a tribute to his friend. This is that map. The link Veg provided, however, led to more than just a Doom map. He's also included a copy of Tom's obituary, where we learn that at some point in his life, he moved back to Oswego, Illinois, where he grew up after reconnecting with his high school crush. Curiously, though they lived together, Tom's partner isn't mentioned alongside the rest of his family. His cat, Scrambles, is though. Veg's link also provides us with pictures of Tom's old photo albums. Here we can see high school track meets, photos of Tom's house, and of course, Scrambles the cat. And a dog? Huh, no one mentioned a dog before. This house looks brand new in the pictures, so I suppose Tom's family must have had a dog when he was much younger, when they first moved to the house. Veg has also provided us with some drawings from Tom's sketchbook, and a copy of his own journal, which reveals that Tom's sketches made him very uncomfortable. Probably for this reason, the only sketches he shared with us are fairly tame. There's a sketch of the house, a blue keycard from Doom, and, well, I guess Tom didn't have fond memories of that dog, because his drawing looks monstrous. Veg's journal also details his own declining mental state. As he struggles with grief over Tom's death and begins to work on cleaning up his house map, he finds himself losing sleep, forgetting things, and on several occasions has vivid nightmares. Although as they increase in frequency and intensity, they begin to more resemble hallucinations, and sometimes complete breaks with reality. First, he dreams about a house fire he experienced in Tom's home when they were children. It's a very bad memory, especially after Tom's recent death, but it appears that this first dream, at least, is a real event they both experienced. Veg next dreams about hearing a baby crying in his attic, and finds an abandoned daycare with a stillborn baby inside. The next nightmare sees Veg drowning in his own bathtub before suddenly finding himself in a strange subterranean cave where he is hunted by demons. By December, Veg has stopped referring to these events as dreams, and writes about entering an alternate world through his bathroom mirror. He feels completely comfortable and at home in the mirror, and from inside it he looks out and sees himself. The next month, he dreams about crashing his car in the woods at night. With an injured leg, he walks along the road until he finds an empty gas station. Luckily, a taxi driver comes down the road and takes him to the hospital. This dream also appears to be at least based on real events, as Tom's photo album contains a picture of a lonely gas station. In Veg's final nightmare, he's the only passenger on a plane over unfamiliar terrain that suddenly becomes caught in a storm and crashes into some kind of structure. After this dream, Veg states outright that these are memories of Tom. On Valentine's Day, Veg mourns the loss of someone he loved and promises to keep looking for someone else who can bring that same light to his life. After that, Veg commits himself fully to completing Tom's map, now feeling like the map is creating itself with his guidance. He willingly gives control to the entity in the map that he believes is building the house. He leaves his job of 13 years to devote himself to the map. In the midst of his feverish work, Veg dreams that he is on a fake beach, a film set of a peaceful location in the middle of an endless void. He compares himself here to Willy Loman, the main character from Arthur Miller's play Death of a Salesman. It's an interesting comparison right after Veg mentions his own career. Willy Loman's whole life was his work. He gave up meaningful relationships with his wife and his sons to pursue his career, only to find in the end that the corporate world he devoted himself to didn't need him at all. His pay is cut, he is unceremoniously fired, and in the end he's forced to face the fact that his entire existence is essentially a delusion. Perhaps in light of Tom's death and the exploration of his childhood, Veg is now facing that same revelation. It's also important to note that Death of a Salesman uses memories to tell its story, and Willy Loman is an unreliable narrator. Reality and fiction are often intertwined in his memories, and since Veg is presenting us here with memories, well, let's not take everything he shares with us too literally. March 2nd, 2023. I was wrong. The map is using me. This morning, I loaded a Doom Builder backup file from late October and spent a few hours preparing the map for release. I tried to delete MyHouse.pk3, but I keep getting a file in use error. I don't think the map will let me. I'm going to post it on Doomworld tonight, but I don't want anyone playing anything other than the original vanilla release. Whatever this map is doing to me, I can't let it do the same to others. March 9th, 2023. I swear I uploaded the safe copy, but MyHouse.pk3 was uploaded by mistake. I don't know if a lot of people were able to download the map before I fixed the link, but hopefully I caught it in time. Well, mistakes do happen. Let's take a look at what's in the map file, shall we? First things first, most Doom maps come with a text file. It's pretty standard stuff, letting the user know how to run the map and what kind of content is in it. Here we learn that Veg's name is Steve Nelson. Going forward, I may use the names Veg and Steve interchangeably, just note that these are the same person. Further down the text file, something unusual appears in the copyright and permissions section. Do not copy and redistribute the material in any medium or format. I tried to delete this map, but it continues to change and evolve without any input from me. What began as a tribute to a lost friend has consumed my entire life. As this map grew beyond what I created, I suffered paranoia and insomnia. It consumed me. Don't let it consume you as well. Delete it. Do not credit me. Do not try and contact me. Do not attempt to use the material for commercial purposes. Do not remix, transform, or build upon the material. Above all, do not distribute this file, modified or otherwise. I tried to keep it from the internet, but it found its way online. It's still changing. It wants you to feel sad, alone, desperate. Don't let it win. Don't play it. Well, if this map is looking for someone who feels sad, alone, and desperate, it came to the right place. Let's launch it. The house on the menu screen is clearly the same one seen in Tom's drawing, so it must be a photograph of Tom's childhood home. Starting a new game drops us into the driveway of a house, and it is immediately apparent that it is about as faithful of a recreation as you can possibly make in Doom. Even the interior matches the pictures found in Tom's photo album. Gameplay here is pretty standard for Doom. There are a few keycards to be found, a yellow keycard in the master bathroom, a red keycard in the bathroom in the basement, and a blue keycard back upstairs in the laundry room closet. At this point, the player has everything they need to leave the map, but perhaps they've noticed a tantalizing power-up in the backyard through the windows and want to go pick that up before moving on. Running around the back of the house, however, reveals that the power-up has disappeared, and the house has mysteriously undergone some changes. Just from the outside, new windows are visible, the roof has gained some modern 3D detailing, and monsters previously killed can be seen alive once again inside the house. Returning to the driveway, the player finds the exit now requires a blue skull key, the type of key item Doom usually uses in its hell-themed levels. The inside of the house now features some modern conveniences and decorations, swinging doors, functional mirrors, this 3D picture frame. Skull keys are now found where the colored key cards previously were. But when the player opens the door to the laundry room closet to retrieve the final blue skull key, they find that suddenly a dark staircase has appeared, leading to a previously non-existent attic space. It's an unsettling sequence, but luckily the blue skull can be gained without incident. The player hurries back down the stairs to the exit, but upon reaching the main hallway finds that both the front door and the door to the garage are now gone. Only bare walls stand in their place, and between them, a new door that unfortunately contains only a shallow closet. But where the house closes one door, it opens another. Turning around, the player finds that suddenly an entirely new hallway has appeared. Close inspection reveals that geometrically, the existence of this space should be impossible, as it intersects with the space occupied by the master bedroom. Stranger still is the door at the end of this hallway, which reveals a 1970s style living room with a fireplace. Despite occupying a seemingly impossible space in the house, the windows look out on the same yard. Backing out of that door reveals yet another new room has appeared in the hall, this time a Bauhaus-style lounge. The way the house is twisting and changing is unsettling, and by this time, even the stock Doom 2 background music has warped into something that feels familiar but all wrong at the same time. Suddenly, an electrical sparking sound can be heard, and investigating it reveals a secret door behind a bookcase in the basement. The sound is coming from a malfunctioning electrical panel inside. Interacting with that results in something completely unexpected. The House Fire from Steven's journal. It began when he was playing in the basement, and by the time he made it upstairs, only a burning frame of the house remained. Nightmarish demons now populate the ruined house, and a handful of burned mementos can be collected. A book, tarnished history. A framed picture, ruined memories. And a teddy bear, innocence lost. The exits are still missing, and despite the extensive structural damage, the player is still trapped in the house. Without anything more to do, they wander back downstairs into the basement. Here, things have again taken a turn for the strange. Every surface is now featureless concrete, and looking out the windows shows a gloomy sky above and sharp rock formations in the yard. The basement door to the garage has now reappeared, but unfortunately, it doesn't lead to the garage we're familiar with. Instead, it leads to this brutalist concrete complex. A quick look around and it becomes clear that this is still the same layout as the house, but now rendered in enormous size and floating in a void surrounded by similar concrete representations of homes. It seems quiet at first, but this bizarre place is home to a hungry creature, a two-headed monstrous dog. The player can try to fight this thing, but given the supplies and weapons available to them, they're much better off running. A small hole in the wall where the basement stairs ought to be provides an escape where the monster can't follow, and eventually leads to another brutalist concrete house. This time, however, it is much smaller than we're used to. Just like the previous iteration, this house is home to a creature. Where once there was a monstrous dog, the small house contains a common pet dog. It's strange to find such an ordinary animal living in this anomalous structure. Perhaps the big house with the monster dog represents Tom's perspective as a small child who was scared of the large family dog. We know his parents owned a dog after all. His Cerberus drawing looks remarkably similar to this monster in the concrete house, and Tom did become a cat owner later in life. Of course, there's always the possibility I'm reading a little too much into things, and Tom was just designing the hot new 3 Wolf Moon t-shirt reboot. Heading into the garage, we can see that the small house is connected again to the big house, creating a loop. Both houses are connected to one another, and we can guess that the same is true for the 2 dogs. The solution to the problem with the monster dog is clear. Their grim work now complete, the player is free to explore the houses, although their featureless concrete rooms make this relatively simple task much more difficult than it sounds. Eventually, they find a deep shaft in the bathtub of the big house and drop into it, where they find themselves suddenly in an airport parking garage. At this point, you may not be surprised to find out the airport terminal shares the same layout as the house. A lounge in the kitchen, a gift shop in the bedroom, a baggage claim in the laundry room, and the living room has become the departure gate itself. It's a densely detailed environment, but there isn't actually a lot going on here. Unless, of course, the player explores the restrooms. Can't have a big mirror in the restroom without a Silent Hill-style room full of blood scare. After that ordeal, the player is probably pretty anxious to get out of there. Through some kind of dream logic, the jetway transports us straight into the plane mid-flight. Eerily, there are no other passengers. Perhaps more concerning is the lack of crew. The cockpit is completely empty. Attempting to take control of the plane yourself, however, does not go well. An alarm blares, oxygen masks deploy in the empty cabin, and shadowy ghosts rush out of the darkness. Trapped here alone at 30,000 feet, there is only one way out. Jumping from the plane lands the player in bed, back in the house. Was it all just a dream? Well, clearly not all of it. The damage from the house fire is plainly visible, and the overgrowth of plants indicates a lot of time has passed since we were last here. More importantly, though, the front door has finally reappeared. Escape! And as one last twist, stepping out the door causes the entire house to vanish, the property apparently having recently been sold by Navidson Realty. One last little House of Leaves reference before the player finally uses that blue key and exits the level. It's an intriguing, sometimes terrifying experience, but it leaves a lot of unanswered questions. We saw representations of Steven's house fire and plane crash dreams, but the daycare, car crash, drowning, and mirror dreams are all missing. This house still has secrets hiding in its walls. Let's start over from the beginning. When the house first changed, you may have noticed there are now a series of empty picture frames hanging on this wall in the living room. This is a subtle clue that these frames need to be filled in. In the fireplace room, there's a can of Pepsi. I want pop. And the Bauhaus room contains a milkshake. The kid needs a milkshake. After picking up these items, you can observe that 2 of the frames have now been filled in. Your first instinct might be that the items in the burned house must be the way forward, but that's a red herring. The picture frames are entirely burned away in that version of the house, locking you out of any path but the one we've already seen. The hint that this is the case can be found in Steven's journal, where the house fire dream has been completely crossed out. Instead, we're going to follow the red numbers. Number 1. The Mirror Dream. Investigating the mirrors in the house reveals nothing of note, except that the player is not reflected in any of them. Upstairs in the attic, tugging on this sheet reveals an additional mirror underneath, which still doesn't reflect the player, but does seem to show a blue Christmas ornament sitting on the floor where the blue skull key ought to be. Additionally, this mirror in the back bathroom seems to be reflecting an enemy that isn't actually there in the house. Through some maneuvering, the player can get up on the countertop and walk straight through the mirror, transporting them into a cold, reflected version of the house. The geometry, as you might expect, has been reversed, but so have all the sounds, and the music has gone from familiar Doom MIDI to a haunting, droning soundscape. The picture frames here are again empty, but after picking up a nearby wine bottle, Drunk Buddy, a single frame fills in, indicating that progress has not been erased, but rather the mirror world requires 8 items in addition to the 8 required in the real world. In the attic of the mirror house, the player can pick up the Christmas ornament they saw in the reflection earlier. Christmas makes me happy. And turning around will reveal another new addition to the house. An old crib sits in the corner of the attic. Inside, the player finds a baby bottle. It wasn't meant to be. We are now on to number 2, the Daycare Dream. In this dream, Steven followed a trail of children's toys from the attic to an abandoned daycare. and when the player returns through the mirror, they will find a trail of colorful balls leading to the mouth of a yellow slide that has appeared in a closet in the basement office. Jumping down the slide, the player lands in a ball pit in the corner of a daycare that has taken the shape of the house's basement. The usual daycare clutter can be found here: children's drawings, a familiar rug, and of course no daycare is complete without an unintentionally terrifying bootleg painting of a popular children's cartoon character. A box of crayons can be found on the floor in the corner of the classroom. Adult coloring books. The chalkboard here shows a picture of a girl and a turkey, and a calendar for December of 1984. This is several years before either Stephen or Tom were born, so I'm not really sure what to make of this. Perhaps it's a reference to the book, where the protagonist works in a government propaganda department editing and erasing history. It seems like a little bit of a stretch, but I can't think of any other reason for that date to be there. Coming back to the main room, we find that Shrek is now gone. The only thing worse than a creepy Shrek painting is not knowing where the creepy Shrek painting is. This room over here contains a couple of cribs, and a baseball seems to have crashed through the window. Autographed by J.J. Hardy. There's a small trail of blood leading out of the room, and another one here in the kitchen leading to the closet, which does not open. Finding blood in an abandoned daycare is never a good sign, and hopefully it isn't connected to those cribs in any way. This is a pretty small area, so inevitably the player wanders back into the classroom where a new door has appeared in the wall next to the blackboard. Walking through it leads to a foggy playground in the middle of the night. Is that door new? Oh. Oh, fuck! What the fuck? God damn it. After dealing with the childhood nightmare in a manner only slightly more upsetting than therapy, the player can collect a key to exit the playground, as well as a stuffed dog sitting on a swing. Snugs. The playground exit, of course, leads back to the house. Upstairs in the living room, it can be observed that the Christmas ornament and baby bottle have filled in the tree and rattle, respectively, and the baseball has, of course, filled in the baseball icon. The frames in the mirror world now display two new icons, one for the crayon and another for little stuffed snugs. Number 3. The Drowning Dream. The only bathtub in the house is this one, containing a small amount of water and a rubber duck. Nearby are two sinks, one filled and the other empty. Interacting with the empty sink will fill it up, and the water level in the bathtub will rise as well. The player still can't reach the rubber duck, but by interacting with all the empty sinks in the house, the bathtub can be filled all the way to the top where the duck will be in reach. Chugga chugga horse horse. Trying to pick up the duck, however, results in the player inevitably slipping into the tub, which seems a lot deeper than it should be. They sink down deeper and deeper, and when they finally hit the bottom, the sound of rushing water can be heard. Emerging from the tub, we find the house completely flooded. Water runs out of the bathtub and every sink, pooling ankle-deep in every room and flowing down into the basement. Investigating the basement shows the water damage to be severe, with water flowing down the walls and from holes in the ceiling. This hallway has suddenly grown quite a bit longer and impossibly loops on itself several times before suddenly emerging into a strange liminal space reminiscent of the pool rooms trend that was seen on the internet not too long ago. Two ghosts are in here, but they don't put up much of a fight. And it doesn't take long to recognize that even the bathhouse resembles the familiar floor plan of Tom's house. Entering the locker rooms in what should be the master bathroom throws the player into a series of infinite corridors, showers, and toilet stalls, all looping on each other in geometrically impossible ways. The locker room in what should be the second bedroom appears perfectly ordinary if you navigate it clockwise. But if you go counterclockwise, a new shower room suddenly appears, which leads to a large lap pool. This pool is home to an enormous fish that will attack if the player enters the water, but it can be safely killed from a distance. On death, the fish drops an item that sinks to the bottom of the pool, a 20-sided die. Roll for intercourse? After a few seconds, the fish explodes into a shower of gore, and dozens of baby fish emerge from the corpse. They can be killed, but with their speed and numbers, they are likely to overwhelm the player. Just as with the monster dog before, it's best to run. In this case, the player can escape through a small underwater tunnel at the bottom of the pool. This tunnel emerges at the bathhouse in what should be the garage, but is now only the suggestion of a physical building floating in the clouds. More strange demons occupy these sky platforms, and even more appear from the void when the player reaches this black tile on the floating bridge. After dealing with them, they may notice that one larger platform floats perpendicular to the bridge at the point where the black tile sits, and features a black tile of its own. Taking a leap of faith and walking off the bridge in the direction of that tile allows the player to collect another item, a wedding ring. I do. Finally, the player can exit through the door at the end of the bridge, leading to the garage section of the large brutalist house. Note that the player has made it to the brutalist house now without going through the house fire like they did last time. Now on the lookout for suspicious items, the player scours both houses, finding a frisbee. Good doggies are good doggies. A can of tuna. Kitties love tunas. And a pumpkin. Pumpkin Rick. For the sake of this cute pupper here, let's also just sneak around the monster dog this time. Like last time, this leads into the airport. The scary restroom contains an item, so unfortunately the player is going to need to go through that nightmare again. At the entrance to the women's restroom is a discarded purse and an empty prescription bottle. Refill needed. After the bloody bathroom brawl, the pills are now full. Feelin' fine. And the restroom signs have now switched genders. Boarding the plane works just the same as before, but now, upon jumping out to escape the crash, the player lands back in the familiar house instead of the overgrown ruin. The picture frames now show a fish, a dog bone, and a ring, and in the mirror world, a jack-o'-lantern, a die, a duck, and a pill have been added. Another new change has taken place in the house. The front doors have reappeared, and the exit is again available. But one item still remains missing from the picture frames. The wall art in the living room that previously had a floral design now shows a picture of the backyard, where a section of fence is missing. The player can go into the backyard and interact with the fence to pull down a section and make a hole, allowing them to pass through and emerge onto a road in the woods at night. This is Steven's car crash dream. Sure enough, walking down the road soon reveals a car that has crashed into a tree. It is unoccupied, but the engine is still running, the lights are on, and the radio is playing. A nice little touch here is that the song on the radio is the center of another internet mystery. It's called the most mysterious song on the internet, and to this day no one knows what it's called, who made it, or even what language it's in. Fascinating stuff, and it really helps drive home the feeling of half-remembered nostalgia present in My House. Following the light of the car's headlights leads to a familiar-looking gas station. The sign briefly reads Hell before the S flickers to life. Nice. The inside, as expected, is abandoned, and a trail of blood can be seen on the floor where the injured driver has clearly been stumbling around. And hey, look at that! The gas station interior has the same layout as the house again. It's like the house itself is stalking us. In the storage room in the back, behind a stack of boxes, is an Atari joystick controller. It's my turn. If the player enters the restroom and allows the door to close behind them, they'll find that upon opening the door, the gas station is now gone, and they're back in the house once again. Collecting the joystick has finally completed the collection of pictures in the mirror world, and the floral art piece in the living room here now displays a new image as well. There's a campsite near the gas station. Trying the fence in the backyard of the mirror world reveals that this too can be pulled down, and a mirror version of the road in the woods is accessible. There is no car crash here, though the gas station is in much worse shape. Crime scene tape covers the door and blood can be seen covering the floor, far more than the small dribble of blood in the other gas station. Exploring the road beyond the gas station, the player finds a small campsite. Smoke rises from the dying embers of a campfire, and nearby a heart with the letters S and A has been carved into a tree. Interacting with this tree opens a path to another ending. A fake beach, a set for a stage play, an illusion. Like Steven said, this ending has us feeling a bit like Willy Loman, stuck behind the mirror, trying to comfort ourselves with a delusion. Somewhere, in another dream, the version of myself that winked back is sitting on the real beach, happy and content, knowing that life is finite, there is no afterlife, and happiness is found in the small things around us that we can control. Happiness has to be fought for. Let's go fight for our real ending. Instead of heading through the tree, the player can turn back. They'll find that rising out of the smoke is a dark creature that gives chase when the player tries to leave the mirrored campsite. It chases them all the way back to the house where new monsters wait to fight the player. Diving through the mirror reveals the real house to be even more hostile, filled to the brim with dangerous creatures. If the player searches the attic for ammunition to deal with these monsters, they'll find the dark figure from the mirror world is standing in the reflected attic where the blue skull key once was. Dealing with these enemies and heading back through the fence to the gas station triggers another ambush, this one larger and more difficult. If the player can survive it, they'll find the campsite tree in this world is now also open. The real beach. The heart is complete. Happiness has to be fought for. It feels like an ending, doesn't it? But there are still pieces of the puzzle missing. Not to mention that even in this ending, we aren't truly facing reality. Remember, to get here, we had to avoid confronting the house fire, the only event Stephen dreamed about that we know for certain actually happened. So let's try again. After collecting all the items, instead of going to the campfire, let's head into the basement and start the house fire. The house disappears, as we've already seen. But the hole in the fence... It's a grave, and on the stone, in place of a name, is a QR code. I'm not showing it here because the popularity of this map seems to have been much greater than even the author was expecting, and the QR code redirecting service they used has already gotten overwhelmed just by people in the Doom community alone. But I will show you what it linked to. Stephen Nelson, age 35, formerly of Plano, Illinois, passed away on August 3rd, 2022 in Oswego, Illinois. Stephen was born on March 13, 1987 to Julie and Douglas Nelson. A joint celebration will be held at the Dwight Olson Center from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m., with the service at 1 p.m. on Sunday, August 7, 2022. Stephen grew up and attended Plano High School, where he was a member of the AV club and the track team, where he discovered his lifelong passion for running. He was also a computer savant and grew up dissecting computers and programming his own games. After graduation, Stephen attended Illinois State and earned a degree in computer science in 2010. Stephen spent the last 13 years working for the Oswego School District as part of the IT staff. It was during this time that he reconnected with a former classmate who would become his future soulmate. They lived together for many years before finally tying the knot in 2020. He and his partner were both active runners and enjoyed hiking, frisbee golf, and laying around the house playing video games. Stephen was the most kind, gentle human anyone ever met, and the world is now less beautiful with him gone. Stephen was blessed to have so many people who loved him. He was preceded in death by his father Douglas Nelson. He is survived by his mother Julie Nelson and sister Samantha. Stephen, Veg, died the same day as Tom. Their funerals were held together. This little twist does feel a bit like a Who Was Phone moment, and together with the slaughter section earlier gives the whole story a sort of deflated feeling conclusion. But perhaps My House is more about the journey than the destination. After all, it does take the form of a video game, which are traditionally far more interested in the moment-to-moment gameplay experience, rather than having a satisfying ending. I mean, Doom 2's ending is just shooting a wall texture that doesn't even fight back. So that was MyHouse.wad. But what can we make of these strange sights and bizarre events? I think the obvious interpretation of what we have seen, and the one most people landed on right away, would be that Stephen and Thomas were clearly more than good friends. For many years, they lived together. According to their obituaries, they were even married. The Valentine's Day journal entry and Daycare Nightmares give the impression that Stephen had a previous relationship that ended very badly. One where he and his partner lost a child. Reconnecting with his high school crush Thomas brought him renewed happiness until that relationship too ended in tragedy. S and A? It could be Stephen and the name of his first partner, or the A could stand for Thomas's last name, Allard. It is unusual to refer to your husband by his last name, and that interpretation does put Stephen through an awful lot of bad luck for one lifetime. But is there any other way to view these events? Consider the nervous message about intercourse, the pills that change the genders in the airport. It's possible Stephen's previous partner, who he tried to have a child with, and his eventual husband, Thomas, are in fact the same person. Perhaps Thomas was a trans man, and he began a relationship with his high school friend Stephen when they were young and Thomas was not out yet. The awkwardness of navigating their sexuality and the eventual loss of their first child drove them apart, but years later they reconnected, Stephen having healed from his loss and Thomas having embraced his true identity. And both of them forgave each other for their past mistakes and started anew. Perhaps the A stands for Thomas's dead name, the one Stephen knew when they first fell in love. It would be strange to continue using this name, considering all they have been through and how much Thomas means to Stephen. But considering the campsite where it appears is a memory, perhaps we're just glimpsing into a bit of true history, blemishes and all. Another theory I'd like to propose is that maybe Thomas and Stephen are in reality simply opposite aspects of Veg himself. Mirrored images. Their life stories, attending the same school, marrying their high school sweethearts, dying on the same day, they don't line up with one another because they were lifelong friends, but rather because they're both describing a single person. Comparing their families, there are some similarities. Fathers Dale and Doug, mothers Judy and Julie, sisters Suzanne and Samantha. Perhaps after losing a child, Veg was split. Thomas was the part of him that fled, moving away, avoiding the uncomfortable reality, surrounding himself in the delusion of a fulfilling career in Wyoming. Stephen was the part of him that stayed, regressing into his high school hobbies of running and playing computer games, unable to move past his loss. When they reconnected, Veg finally accepted all parts of himself. Stephen and Thomas died because, well, Veg didn't need them anymore. Like all great mysteries, I'm sure we'll be talking about MyHouse.wad for some time to come. There are no solid conclusions here, and I don't suspect we will ever find any. If you have any thoughts on this, I encourage you to keep this discussion going. Keep probing into that mirror. See if you can find your way through. Once again, I'd like to thank you all for joining me on this journey. Remember to take care of one another, keep fighting for your happiness, and every now and then, visit the beach. Until next time, take it easy.